welcome to another council conversation with the City of Jonesboro. And today we are honored to have a veteran council member. And the last time we talked, he was not a veteran. LJ Bryant, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's an honor to have you. And do you remember your rookie year?
I do remember my rookie year, and I was looking in the mirror before I came up here combing my hair, and I have more gray hair now. So I don't know if it's a direct correlation to service on the council or if it's just a matter of age, but maybe there's some correlation there.
I don't know if there is, but I can tell you that you go through a period where you have more gray hair and then suddenly you have less. So it'll work out. But talk about a little bit, when you that first year, the things that you learned and the things that you take for granted now. You know what I mean? That you didn't know what you had some idea, but you really didn't know.
Yeah, no, that's so well said. And so I got on the council, a fellow resigned, and I got appointed, and so I kind of came into the middle or toward the end of his term. And so in particularly, it wasn't like when you get elected normally and maybe there's some meetings or some workshops or some training through the municipal league. You just kind of jump in and you get sworn in, and then all of a sudden you're on the city council. And a matter of fact, I got sworn in at a city council meeting. Of course, you're immediately on the city council. And I think it was maybe it was you who immediately told me, like I had a stormwater meeting the next day, and it's like, well, I don't even know what a stormwater board is. I know it rains and the water runs someplace. And so, you figure a lot of that out trial by fire. And here I am 5 or 6 years later, and now there's at least 3 new people on the council since me, and kind of watching them, it reminds me, as I see them learning things, it reminds me what it was like when I was in their shoes trying to learn all the various things that happen.
You did a lot probably of just watching and learning and deciding when. You might have had some opinions but weren't sure if it was time to weigh in.
That's well said. I remember I had a teacher when I was a kid, and she always said, don't ask a question until I'm done teaching, and you're sure that I'm not going to go over it in today's lesson. And so sometimes I think you feel like that when you're first on the council. It's like, well, I have a question, but did I really study everything in my packet? Was it in there someplace and I ought to know the answer to it? Right. And then after a period of time, you kind of get over it. Sometimes I'll say to you or whoever maybe in city government, like, I know I might have read it someplace, but help me out. What's the answer to this question?
Right. And there are answers. And you talk about the packets. Will you tell people what the packets are?
Sure, yeah. So whenever we have a council meeting, and I'll say for us, because I've been kind of nerding out on other cities and how they do things, I think we probably do a better job than just about anybody with our website. So if you go on Legistar, there's an attachment to everything we vote on to the nth degree. And our meetings, your department does such a nice job streaming our videos on Facebook. And if you go to other cities, because sometimes out of curiosity, I'll want to watch their meetings, see how they do things. Most of the time, you'll have a hard time finding it, even larger cities. And so for us, we really study over, most of the time, just about any piece of information we could humanly want that we're voting on is buried in all that stuff someplace. And so we work hard and study it, typically on a Thursday or Friday before the meeting on Tuesday. But, we're never caught off guard by anything. We never vote on anything massive with 3 or 4 days notice. So we usually have adequate time to study on things and ask questions.
And you can also have the conversation during the meetings back and forth, and obviously the public is included in those conversations. So
absolutely,
it should bear out any controversy or problem. But
absolutely, and I think in my 5 or 6 years and 2 mayors and many council people at this point, rarely is there much posturing. Most of the time people are just genuinely trying to do the right thing and find the right answers, and everybody comes at it from a different perspective, but most of the time everybody gets along pretty well.
They do get along well, and take it from a guy who's lived in, I think I counted 7 cities as an adult and covered city council as a reporter in one city. It's very professionally, you guys are cordial to one another, whether you disagree or agree. You don't have to be. I can promise you that. I've seen it where it's not. But the fact that you are shows professionalism and respect, and it's cool to see that type of congeniality among leaders, because you're role models. You're setting an example for the city and how to treat people who have different visions than you have.
Well said.
Well, I think, my observation, and if you disagree with it, say, Bill, just go a different course. But a lot of times our concerns are from people who are saying we need to do more quality of life things or quality of place things versus people who say, no, we need to spend less tax money and make sure we're safe and the roads are striped and that sort of stuff. How do you balance that?
That's a great question, and the discussion I had today, and I forget how somebody phrased it. I remember the first part of how they framed the argument. They said, you could have a really safe place that nobody wants to live, and I thought, wow, now that's a really great point. And there's a study from the National Association of Realtors, and it talks about the main couple things people are looking for, at least on a nationwide basis as it relates to housing, and public safety is obviously number one. But number two in the study is all of the quality of life things. And then number three is actually schools, because fertility rates have gone from 2.1 to 1.7. So you have a considerable amount of people that either they're past the stage of having children or they're not going to have children at all. So that would not be a primary consideration. So not to say, obviously, that our education systems here aren't important. Of course they are. But now some of these other things are even taking higher precedent, particularly with work from home and all the changes. And so honestly, both of them are equally important, and you have to find a way to pay for both of them in a sustainable fashion, and that's tough because inflation impacts the city just like it does, everyday citizens.
Right. And as a communications director, not a finance expert by any stretch of the imagination, I watch our tax income every month, and we're making it. But it's because of a lot of hard work and number crunching from the mayor down through the finance office and chiefs and directors of every department. Everybody has to say, how frugal can we be and still provide the level of quality that Jonesboro deserves?
Sure.
And do you think are we going to be able to maintain on this course, or is that just too much to answer right now?
I think that everything costs so much money, and we had those folks present at the council meeting about a master plan for the city, and I remember some community they had been in, and I imagine probably similar results could happen here, that if you really study on certain areas, that honestly they're a net negative just from a dollar and cent perspective. How much money does it take the city to provide a service versus how much money does the city get back? And we were having a conversation before this about how, let's say somebody who maybe they live in Bay or Bono today, they do probably almost all their business in Jonesboro, which is great. We appreciate them being part of the community and shopping in our businesses. But when they do maybe move to Jonesboro, there's probably not much additional spending they're going to do. They already did all their spending here.
Right.
And so they live in a house in a subdivision. The property tax money basically doesn't go to us other than police and fire pension.
Right.
So all of a sudden they don't really bring any net new dollars to us, but we've got fire and police, sanitation, and all the other things that go with it. And we're very spread out, second largest city geographically in the state, which brings the disadvantages that we're discussing, but it brings the advantage. I was talking to somebody at the Municipal League, and we were talking about this very issue today, and they said, you know what, this guy said, he said, in your lifetime, talking about my lifetime, he said, in your lifetime, Jonesboro is going to be the biggest city in the state of Arkansas. And I said, you really think that? And he said, oh, yeah. He said, y'all have got the geographic area to grow that nobody has. Northwest Arkansas is out of dirt unless they just really, really go vertical. And so if we do things right as a community, we could really have some tremendous success in the long term.
That's an interesting take right there, because we do have, I was astounded the first time I started looking at numbers and noticed that we have more square miles than I think St. Louis, Baltimore, Cincinnati, cities that have professional sports teams. That's always been are you a pro sports city or not? And Jonesboro's not a pro sports city yet, but Arkansas State's they're going to be okay.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
But that is an interesting thought about how we're going to do that, and then this again, you have the it's fun to see people invested in how we grow and where we grow. Do you and also it's really cool to see the development that because you have really invested in this. And what have you been, 6 years, 5 years?
Yeah,
right
2017 to now, so about 6 years. 6 years, I think, August 1st.
Okay,
yeah.
On the council. So you've had 6 years to study, ponder, and listen and take in, digest all the concepts that you want. What type of growth do you recommend, or what would you like to see?
I think we've got to have some super smart growth and some sustainable growth, and particularly some infill development. And the city's worked really hard to try to facilitate those things. I mean, whether it's the land bank or form-based zoning that really allows density as a trade-off to aesthetics. And as hard as we've worked on all of it, it's taking effect. I mean, all the things Ted Hargett's done, particularly east of Main Street, or what Andrew Berner's done on Union. So, I mean, we're seeing some of that. And as the city's invested more in sidewalks on Culver House and Monroe, we just need to see more of it, honestly, east of G, west of Main. So there's a lot more yet to come. I just think we have to really think about what role, if any, do we need to play to help facilitate some of those things happening? Because the people desire walkability, and so it's all the chicken and egg problems of we've got to help get more residents near the G Street corridor and near the Main Street corridor to help those businesses succeed. You know, it's
Right.
what comes first, the businesses or the residents, and it's a little bit of both.
It is. That's a very good point. I've seen the change in my time here downtown and in different parts of the city, and we're doing a good job. We're beginning at least to do a good job of saving what was dying parts of the city, and it's cool to see that and feel that change. It has to benefit everybody at some level, and some people are worried about just getting a paycheck, making the rent, and getting where they need to get. And I think that's the other side of it. This walkability is not just for your exercise. For some people, it's their mode of transportation, whether bicycle or foot.
And that's so well said. And we see, I think we've seen that happen for a long time. I mean, a lot of young people don't want a driver's license, even around here. I mean, I anecdotally see that. I'm a runner. And so, I mean, you got runners, you got walkers. And then the funny thing is, I remember when we passed the sidewalk ordinance in 2018, I believe it was, there were some folks, there were developers that said, man, I've built subdivisions for a long time and nobody's ever asked for a sidewalk. And it's like, well, nobody asked for an iPhone until they were given one. And so I feel like that's where we are now with trails and sidewalks, is there's so many people that would use them that don't even know that they're going to use them until they're out their front door.
That's wonderful. And you've got, you clearly, it's fun to watch the way the world has unfolded for you, way Jonesboro and your vision for it has unfolded over these last 6 years. Let me switch you up just a little bit and tell people a little bit about LJ Bryant. What's it like at your house? Is it chaos? You got good people in there?
Yeah. So my wife's great, super chill all the time, the easiest person to get along with. I think I probably tricked her into marrying me, but hey, it says something for me that I was able to trick her and do that. So that was my biggest accomplishment.
Great, yeah.
We have a little mini golden doodle. My wife's having a baby in December, and so for me, all the things that we talk about now are like way more heightened, right? Like, how can we accomplish these things so that my kid would want to live here? Because even though 18 years seems like a long time from now, honestly, with a lot of the things we're talking about, it's just not.
You have to plan in advance.
You have to plan in advance, and even when you see the success, even say in Northwest Arkansas, even with all the Walton's money, some of those things took decades. I mean, to study the things and do the things and fund the things, and so as we work toward all of that, we have to do it in such an expeditious way to make sure that we don't miss our opportunity, but not in such an expeditious way that we can't sustain it. So that's our challenge.
And that reminds me of one last question, or brings up one last question of you. The coming from the business world and into this, you understand the difference in time tables regarding government and business. It's a little different. Now you are going to have a baby, and then you've got the whole growth process, and people out there with children want their city to be the best it can be.
Sure.
And what have you learned about the time that's invested?
Yeah, I think that's so well said, and I think the longer you're in it, I think it can go a little bit of both ways, right? Like I was talking to a guy that used to live around here, and now he doesn't. We were talking about mosquitoes. And I mean, I grew up at Wiener. There's no more mosquitoes than there is in Wiener, and we've got our share in Jonesboro. But until you kind of go away from the mosquitoes and come back, you kind of forget about the problem, you know? And so, I mean, there's some things like that that are so pressing that impact everybody. Sometimes I feel like we have Stockholm Syndrome because we've all been part of it for so long.
Yes.
And so there's some things like that. But then sometimes there's some other things that can, particularly when it comes to staff raises and things of that nature, which is what's being discussed right now as it relates to public safety, is the market has moved, and so we have to catch up, but then how do we sustain that? And then when we have almost 600 city employees, some of the ripple effect of some of that over time, how do we make sure that we can sustain those raises and still provide all the services that we need to provide? So those are some of the challenges I think that are before us in the short term.
Very nice. He's LJ Bryant. He's your councilman, and he's doing a great job for the city. And LJ, we thank you for taking the time
Thanks,
to visit
Bill.
with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.